Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This here is Legitico Response. We cover political news. We keep you up to date and keep you informed with everything that the government does. Now, we are constantly talking about the Biden administration. You guys know, I'm sure, you know my opinion on the Biden administration. It's one of the worst administrations in American history. They are actively destroying the norms in this country, right? And it's a communist revolution that we are going through right now, in case you guys haven't noticed. Wake up and see what's going on. Like, some people are still oblivious to this fact. These people are communists, right? And what does a communist revolution do, right? They tear everything completely down, because you can't build your communist utopia on top of another system, right? You can't build it on your old capitalist system. Everything has to be destroyed to the ground. They're trying to destroy the justice system, but all systems. They're trying to destroy everything, right? Like, and not actually physically going out there and destroy. I'm not being hyperbolic. It's not a physical destruction of these systems, but they want to break everything down. Break everything down and then rebuild it back up, right? But what do all communist revolutions end in? Failure. And hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of dead bodies, because the people that don't want to capitulate to the revolution, they need to be excised, right? That's a virus to that revolution. I'm not a communist, so I'm going to be one of those people that get taken out. So I'm going to fight for my survival. I'm going to fight for the survival of this country. It has its problems, but it works. It's been working great. Look at our status. We are the best country in the world, right? Like, I know using the word best is a loaded word to use when you're talking about countries, but we're the best. We had the best economy for a long time, right? But we've been in decline because of this communist revolution. It's sucking up all the energy out of the economy, right? The economy's failing because the government can't support its own people like a communist government tries to do. Not on this scale, right? Like, I take something Ben Shapiro has said before, right? Like, he's totally against communism as a government entity, right? So a government shouldn't be communist, but in your household, yes, that's a good thing, right? Because you need to lead your house with strength, right? And moral character, and you need to be the leader of your house, and it has to run in a certain way. Communism works on very, very small scales. Doesn't work on very big scales because you can't help everybody. But that's what this Biden administration is seemingly trying to do, and they're now tearing down the walls between men and women. We've been seeing this coming for a while. If you haven't noticed it, yeah, I'm sure you've noticed it. Check this out, y'all. Arkansas governor says state won't comply with new federal rules on treatment of trans students. Now, what they're talking about now is Title IX, right? The Biden administration took Title IX, which was basically put in place for women's rights, the feminist movement, right? Like, they had a lot of strides, and they got a lot of women's rights, and it was great. It worked out. It gave a lot of women the rights that women deserve. But now the Biden administration has come in and totally just destroyed it, right? Trying to put transgenderism into this thing, destroying women's rights, destroying the feminism movement. And Biden, I love it. He's always talking about, I know the power of women and all this other stuff. Like, what are you doing? You're pandering again, Joe? Yeah, that's what Joe seems to do. That's the only way he can even try to get votes, is by pandering to people. Well, if you ain't black, you don't know, you ain't voting for me if you ain't black type. It's like, what are you doing, Joe? Now he's pandering to the transgender, right? Like, trying to get their votes for some reason, right? He's trying to get student votes by paying off student loan debt. Biden is just absolutely destroying this country, and I don't know what other way I can convey it but then to let the governor of Arkansas do it for me.
I've said before that the dividing line in this country is no longer between right and left. It's between normal and crazy. And the most recent attack on common sense came from President Biden's Department of Education and their total rewrite of Title IX. When Title IX was first written, it was 37 words long. The message was simple: Men and women deserve equal access to higher education. In the 52 years since, there have been several beneficial additions: guaranteeing equal access to college athletics, establishing due process for harassment cases, and so on. However, last month, President Biden released a reinterpretation of Title IX that comes in at an insane 459,000 words. Let that sink in. It's a document that should scare every woman and, frankly, every man in America. Title IX was created to protect women, but Biden's Title IX attempts to erase women completely.
Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders declared Thursday that the state won't comply with a federal regulation that seeks to protect the rights of transgender students in the nation's schools, joining other Republican-led states that are defying the new rules. And once again, you see how the mainstream narrative machine, they're trying to frame it like they're not going to comply with what did it say? To protect the rights of transgender students. No, I'm sorry. That's very illogical, corporate press, by the way. They're not fighting against the rights of transgender students, right? Like, transgender students have all the rights that everybody else does, right? Like, you don't get extra rights because you think you're something that you're not, right? Like, you don't get specific rights because you're in a delusional state. I'm sorry, that's not how reality works, right? Like, women have rights, men have rights, because there are very distinct biological differences between men and women. And Title IX, the new Title IX, by the way, is blurring those lines. It's crossing to where, if you feel like a woman today, now you're covered under Title. And it's like, no, that's not how life works. So they're not trying to damage the rights of transgender students. No, they're trying to keep a little bit of sanity with our country, right? This whole transgenderism thing, like, oh, you want to affirm your delusion and all this other stuff. No, I'm sorry. That's insane. You can't just affirm people's delusions all the time, right? Like, if you have somebody who's constantly hallucinating and they're telling you stuff, you don't affirm that to these people, right? Like I've said it before, a paranoid schizophrenic, you don't affirm their schizophrenia. Now, I'm sorry, mental disorders don't work like that. I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I have basic understanding, right? I don't need a PhD in psychology to figure out that, yeah, if you affirm schizophrenia, that's not a good thing. You're never going to bring them back to reality if you just affirm their schizophrenia, if you affirm their paranoid delusions, right? Like, no, I'm sorry. That's just not how medical practice works, right? Like, once again, you don't need to have a PhD to figure this stuff out. A little bit of common knowledge and a little bit of logical critical thinking skills can work you right through this. But the Biden administration doesn't have that. They are pandering at the cost of the United States. And we need to stop this before it's too late, y'all. Sanders signed an executive order stating that Arkansas schools will continue to enforce restrictions on which bathrooms and pronouns transgender students can use, laws that could be invalidated by the new regulations on how to enforce Title IX. My message to Joe Biden and the federal government is we will not comply, Sanders said at a news conference at the state capitol. The regulation finalized last month seeks to clarify Title IX, a landmark 1972 sex discrimination law originally passed to address women's rights and applied to schools and colleges receiving federal money. The regulations spell out that Title IX bars discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity too. Sanders called those changes a complete reinterpretation of the law. Yeah, because you're basically erasing women's rights in the process, because now men can be women, and if men can go into a woman's bathroom or play in women's sports, you're setting yourself up to completely dissolve the differences in biology. Hundreds of years of scientific biology, you're going to destroy that. All the work that has been done for women's rights, feminism movement, and all that other stuff gets destroyed with this, because now men can be women, right? So there's no distinction between male and female. How much sense does that make, Joe? It makes none. Sanders' order follows similar moves by several other states, including Texas and Oklahoma, that have told schools to not comply with the new regulation. Lawsuits have been filed in federal courts in Texas, Alabama, Louisiana, and Kentucky challenging the rule. The multiple challenges give the states a better chance that one of them will put the rule on hold nationally. Yeah, hopefully it does so. Sanders' order follows several moves by Arkansas to restrict the rights of transgender youth. No, it doesn't restrict their rights whatsoever. They still have every single right that they had before. See, I hate the corporate press, man. They're just lying to you. It doesn't restrict their rights. It's stopping them from doing something that they're not supposed to do, right? Like, men aren't supposed to go into women's bathrooms. There's laws against this. You got to think. We put these laws in place for a very good reason. And they just want to destroy all this. Once again, like I said, destroying the country. The state has appealed a judge's order striking down Arkansas's first-in-the-nation ban on gender-affirming care for minors, right? Like, that whole thing pisses me off. Gender-affirming care? No, it's not gender-affirming care. It's delusion-affirming care, because you're affirming their delusion. You're not affirming their gender, right? Like, going based off of gender affirmation, right? You would tell a boy that they are a boy. You wouldn't tell them that they are a girl. That's not an affirmation, by the way. That's why I hate the language of the left, because it's so manipulative that it just distorts reality into fiction. Because that's all that is fiction. They're not actually changing their sex whatsoever. A group of transgender, non-binary, and intersex residents sued the state earlier this week over its decision to no longer allow X instead of male or female on state-issued driver's licenses and identification cards, right? That is for a very good reason. They do this. You need to be a male or a female. Biology is binary as far as humans go in most mammalian species. I think all mammalian species and other species, as a matter of fact, are mostly binary. There are very few that are non-binary, if you will. Right, that whole non-binary bit is dumb, right? Like, I'm not either or. Yes, you are, because there is no other category, right? Like, they do have intersex people, but they mostly skew in a certain, one way or the other. So, sure, they're kind of in between, but they have mostly the characteristics of one or the other. This act is a stark defiance of laws to protect against discrimination and a clear aggressive attack on the well-being and freedoms of LGBTQ people in our state, Megan Bailey, spokesperson for the American Civil Liberties Union of Arkansas, said in a statement. Yeah, and we're just going to go ahead and trust that.
It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me. People like you.
It's not an aggressive attack on the well-being of anybody. It's trying to maintain something, right? We're trying to conserve our country because we love our country. We don't want to see it destroyed with your insane ideology, with your insane delusional crap. Sanders' order calls on the state education department to give schools specific guidance, saying at no point should Arkansas law be ignored. In addition to laws on bathrooms and pronouns, the order cites Arkansas's laws restricting what teams transgender athletes can play on. The Biden administration's new rule broadly protect against discrimination based on sex, but they don't offer guidance around transgender athletes, right? Like, there shouldn't be any guidance. If you're a boy, you play on the men's team. If you're a girl, you play on the girls' team. That's it. Brandon Wolf, Senior Director for Political Communications and National Press Secretary of the LGBTQ advocacy group Human Rights Campaign, warned that the state's refusal to comply could have damaging consequences, including a significant loss in funding. You know what I would say to that? So what? Go ahead, take your funding. We don't care about your stupid funding. We don't want nothing to do with your stupid ideology. You're trying to force your ideology onto people, right? Like, that's not how democracy works, is it? No, it's not. That's not how a democracy works. We want freedom. But we're not a democracy. I know. I understand. We're a constitutional republic, and this is how our liberty is supposed to work. We're not supposed to be forced into doing stuff that we don't want to do, right? Especially when it's not harming anybody, right? This is not going to cause harm to transgender people. It's not going to cause harm to LGBT plus people, whatever. Maintaining the norms in this country isn't going to damage any of these people in any way, but they can't have that, right? They can't have their delusion shattered, absolutely, because they got to maintain their delusion for some reason, and the advocates that have nothing to do with this, they just advocate for this, are making the problem even worse because they're going along with the delusion, right? Like, if you have somebody who thinks that they are a frog, a human being that thinks they're a frog, you're not going to affirm that. That would make absolutely no sense. So then what are we expected to do in that situation? What? Write up new laws for all frogs? No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to be forced into that delusional state. I'm sorry. But we're going to push back against this. We're going to fight because we don't adhere to your ideology. That appears to be a sacrifice that those whose only priorities are themselves and their own political profiles are willing to make, Wolf said in a statement. No. They're worried about their constituents. They're worried about the civilians in this country. Just because we don't care about your delusion doesn't mean that we're only in it for ourselves, right? No, we're in it for everybody. We have liberties in this country. This is supposed to be the bastion of freedom and democracy, but they're turning this into some sort of authoritarian regime, right? Like where you're going to be forced to call somebody by specific pronouns. Well, I thought we had freedom of speech, right? Like they're trying to write up laws to where if you misgender somebody, that you can get in trouble for that. There can be penalties for misgendering somebody. I'm sorry. That's not how freedom works. I'm free to say whatever the hell I want to say. And that's why I'm on YouTube saying whatever the hell I want to say. And we don't buy into your delusion. It keeps coming back to that. You're in a delusional state. And why are we arguing with somebody in a delusional state, by the way? Because some of these advocates aren't in a delusional state. They're just trying to pander to these people so they can get their votes, right? It's a small group. I don't understand this ideology whatsoever. It blows my freaking mind. But I think I've said enough on this topic. I think y'all get my point. But y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Do y'all think that the new Title IX is something that we should actually rejoice for? Right? Like the destruction of the norms in this country to affirm somebody's delusion. It's not how I want this country to go. I want everybody to have the liberties that they deserve, their God-given rights, right? I want these transgender people to feel comfortable with their transgenderism, right? But I don't want to be forced into their delusional world, right? Like, you can't force that on other people. Hey, look, if you're a transgender, I've said it before, I don't mind. Hey, if I accidentally misgender you, I'm sorry. But I'm not going to play along with that, right? I'm not going to actually call you a woman. If you want to be called by a girl's name, sure, I'll call you by that girl's name. But I'll still refer to you as a him if you are a him. Because you are a him. You're still a male. You're not a female. I'm not going to affirm your delusion. And this is another thing. If you want people to affirm your delusion, then at least make it presentable, right? Like, if you actually look like a female and I can't tell the difference, then I can't tell the difference, and I'm going to call you by whatever you look like, right? But if you look like an absolute dude, and you come up talking about I'm a ma'am, then I'm sorry if I misgender you, but I'm not going to go along with that. I'm sorry, but y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comment section. That's all I got for this one, y'all. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.